The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished chrome and floating platforms. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated areas, breathing different atmospheres through specialized filters. At the center, the massive holographic display showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in the void. "The primitives have finally achieved faster-than-light travel," announced Zextar, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist. His forearms gestured toward the display as his insectoid features clicked with amusement. "They call themselves humans." A ripple of laughter echoed through the chamber's translation systems. The Valorian delegate, a crystalline being named Kreeshaw, chimed like breaking glass. Another rookie species stumbling into the void. "How refreshing." "Indeed," agreed Ambassador Thren of the Aquatic Union, his gills fluttering behind his breathing apparatus. "Their technology is barely functional. Chemical rockets until recently, nuclear fusion that barely works, and their first FTL drive looks like it was assembled by children." The display zoomed in on a crude human spacecraft. Compared to the elegant bioships of the Verdani or the quantum-folded vessels of the Tech Collective, it looked like a metal box with engines strapped to the back. Exposed wiring ran along the hull, and the whole thing leaked various fluids into space. "Look at this pathetic design," scoffed General Vox, his reptilian scales reflecting the chamber's light. "No energy shields, no quantum armor, no biological integration. They're still using explosive decompression airlocks." "The analysis of their homeworld is equally amusing," Zextar continued, pulling up more data. "They've barely colonized their own system. A few research stations, one small lunar base, and some mining operations on dead rocks. They haven't even terraformed their neighboring planet." The council members exchanged knowing looks. Every species in the chamber had conquered at least 12 systems before making first contact. The hegemony controlled 300 worlds. The Valorians had consumed the energy of 17 stars. These humans were clearly the most primitive species to ever stumble into galactic society. "What's their population count?" asked Counselor Zeph, a gaseous being contained within a mechanical suit. "Just over 8 billion on their homeworld," Zextar replied. "No significant off-world populations." More laughter filled the chamber. The smallest Galactic Council member, the Micro Collective, had a population of 2 trillion spread across their hive worlds. "And their military capabilities?" General Vox leaned forward, interested despite himself. "Primitive projectile weapons, basic energy systems, no orbital defenses worth mentioning," the xenobiologist reported. "They still fight wars on their planet's surface using chemical explosives and metal bullets. Their largest warships are atmospheric flying machines." "Flying machines?" Counselor Moore's telepathic voice carried disbelief. "They haven't even moved beyond atmospheric combat?" "It gets better." Zextar's mandibles clicked with glee. "They have over 200 separate political entities on a single planet. They can't even achieve basic planetary unity." The chamber erupted in what each species considered laughter. The hegemony had united their homeworld within 50 years of developing intelligence. The Valorians had achieved perfect crystalline harmony in even less time. These humans were clearly dysfunctional at a fundamental level. "So we're dealing with a fractured, primitive, barely space-capable species," summarized Supreme Counselor Wythex, the ancient leader whose species had founded the Council 3,000 years ago. "The standard rookie protocol, then?" "Absolutely," agreed General Vox. "Demand immediate surrender, offer them junior membership status, and assign them to resource extraction duties. Standard procedure." "What about their planet?" asked the Verdani representative, her flower-like head turning toward the display. "Any useful biological resources?" "Extensive biodiversity, but nothing we haven't seen before," Zextar replied. "The usual carbon-based life, some interesting ocean ecosystems, decent mineral content." We could strip mine it in about 50 years once we relocate the population to labor worlds. Perfect, Supreme Counselor Wythex decided. General Vox, take your third fleet and make contact. Give them the standard ultimatum. If they surrender immediately, we'll be merciful. If not... The ancient being's tentacles writhed with anticipation. Well, we haven't had a good planet-cracking demonstration in decades. General Vox's reptilian features split into what might have been a grin. It will be my pleasure, Supreme Counselor. How long should I give them to consider their options? Oh, be generous. Ithex waved a dismissive tentacle. Give them a full rotation of their planet to decide. No need to be cruel to such primitive creatures. And if they try to resist? Vox asked, though the question was clearly rhetorical. Their entire military could barely damage one of our scout ships, laughed Zexitar. The briefing shows they're still using chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons. Our shields could withstand their entire planetary arsenal. The Third Fleet was the hegemony's second smallest battle group. 50 heavy cruisers, 200 destroyers, and 1 dreadnought. It was designed for policing actions and dealing with minor rebellions. For a primitive species like the humans, it was massive overkill. I almost feel sorry for them, admitted Counselor Krisha, her crystalline form chiming softly. They probably think they're alone in the universe. Imagine their shock when they discover there's an entire galactic civilization. Their shock will be brief, General Vox assured her. Once they see the Third Fleet decloak in their system, they'll understand their place in the cosmic order. The display shifted to show the fleet preparing for departure from hegemony space. The ships were sleek, predatory things with organic curves and energy cannons that could crack continents. Each destroyer alone mounted more firepower than the humans had ever dreamed possible. Any special instructions for handling their leadership? Vox inquired. Bring their most important leaders to the Council for processing, Ithex commanded. We'll need to study their psychology for optimal integration into our labor systems. The rest can remain on their world until we decide what to do with them. Understood, Vox saluted with his clawed hand. The Third Fleet will depart within the day. As the council session ended, the representatives began filing out to their respective ships and stations. The business of first contact with primitive species was routine by now. In 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had encountered hundreds of rookie species. The process was always the same: contact, ultimatum, surrender, integration. None of them noticed the small detail buried deep in the xenobiologist's report. Hidden among thousands of data points about human culture and biology was a single line that would have changed everything if anyone had bothered to read it carefully. The humans' oldest written records contained references to something they called the Great Silence. Ancient texts spoke of a time when the voice of the ancestors had suddenly stopped speaking to them. Archaeological evidence suggested an advanced civilization had existed on Earth roughly 12,000 years before, then vanished without a trace. But Zextar had dismissed it as primitive mythology. Every rookie species had legends about lost golden ages or ancient visitors. It was a common psychological development pattern among emerging civilizations. The Third Fleet engaged its faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the cosmic void, carrying with it the Galactic Council's complete misunderstanding of what they were about to encounter. In the observation deck of his flagship, General Vox watched the stars streak past and smiled. Another primitive world would soon join the Galactic Council's vast empire of subject species. The humans would learn their place in the universe, just like all the others. He had no idea that humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Meanwhile, in the depths of space near the human solar system, ancient automated systems that had been dormant for 12 millennia began receiving signals that matched predetermined activation codes embedded in human DNA. signals that triggered protocols established long before the Galactic Council had even existed. The Great Silence was about to end, and when it did, every assumption the Council had made about these primitive humans would crumble like sand before a tsunami. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced starship, watching the impossible unfold before her eyes. The alien fleet had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, and their ships were unlike anything human science had predicted. 52 large vessels confirmed, Admiral, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from his sensor station. Energy signatures are off the charts. These things make our fusion reactors look like campfires. Sarah nodded grimly. She'd been expecting this day for 3 years, ever since the deep space monitoring stations had detected the first signs of faster-than-light travel approaching their system. Humanity had spent those years preparing, but looking at these alien vessels, she wondered if any preparation could have been enough. "Open a channel to Earth Command," she ordered. "Priority Alpha." General Morrison's weathered face appeared on the main screen within seconds. Behind him, Sarah could see the bustling activity of the Global Defense Center, humanity's unified military command established just 5 years earlier. "Admiral, we're tracking the alien fleet," Morrison said without preamble. "What's your assessment?" "They're more advanced than our worst-case scenarios predicted, sir," Sarah replied. "But we're proceeding with Protocol 7 as planned." Morrison's expression remained steady. Protocol 7 was humanity's most desperate contingency, developed based on information that most people would have dismissed as fantasy. But the Global Defense Center knew better. They knew humanity's true history. "Confirmed, Admiral. Authorization code Omega 1212. God help us all." The channel closed and Sarah turned to her communications officer. "Lieutenant Reeves, transmit the activation sequence. All frequencies. Maximum power." "Admiral, are you sure about this?" asked Commander Torres, her first officer. "We don't know if it will even work after all this time." Sarah looked at the approaching alien fleet on the tactical display. Each ship was easily 10 times the size of the Defiance, and there were dozens of them. Humanity's combined space fleet consisted of 12 ships total, and most of those were barely armed research vessels. "It has to work, Commander," she said quietly, "because if it doesn't, we're about to become someone else's slaves." The activation sequence transmitted into deep space, carried by quantum entanglement communicators that human scientists had only recently learned to build. The technology was based on fragments of knowledge discovered in ancient ruins scattered across Earth, ruins that most archaeologists had dismissed as natural formations. Aboard the hegemony flagship Inevitable Victory, General Vox watched the primitive human fleet with amusement. 12 small ships against his entire third fleet. It would hardly qualify as target practice. "General, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessels," reported his communications officer. "Put it through," Vox commanded, settling back in his command throne. This should be entertaining. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in a blue military uniform. Her face was calm, professional, showing no sign of the terror she should be feeling. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force," she said. "I'm here to inform you that you have entered restricted space without permission." The bridge of the Inevitable Victory erupted in laughter. Restricted space? These primitives thought they could restrict anything? "I am General Vox of the Hegemony Third Fleet," he replied, his universal translator converting his words into the human language. "You will surrender your vessels immediately and prepare for planetary occupation. Resist, and your species will be exterminated." The human admiral's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, General. You see, this system is under the protection of the predecessor accords, and your presence here constitutes a direct violation." Vox's amusement faded slightly. "What did you say?" The predecessor accords, established 12,000 years ago by the First Council. Admiral Chen continued calmly. Surely your xenohistorians mentioned them in their briefings. A cold feeling began spreading through Vox's chest. The predecessors were myth, legend, stories told to young species about the mysterious civilization that had supposedly existed before the current galactic order. No serious scholar believed they had actually existed. "You're lying," he growled. "The predecessors are fairy tales." "Are they?" Chen asked. "Then perhaps you can explain what's happening to your long-range sensors right now." Vox spun toward his sensor station. His officer's face had gone pale, which was quite an achievement for a being with naturally gray skin. "General, I'm detecting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system," the officer reported, his voice shaking. "Dozens of contacts, moving faster than our sensors can track." On the tactical display, new symbols began appearing. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Ships were emerging from what appeared to be empty space, their energy signatures dwarfing even the massive hegemony dreadnought. "Impossible," Vox whispered. "Where were they hiding?" "They weren't hiding," Admiral Chen explained, still appearing completely calm. "They were sleeping, waiting for the activation codes that only a human could provide." The alien ships weren't like anything in the Galactic Council's databases. They were sleek, angular vessels that seemed to bend light around them. Some were as large as space stations, others were small and fast like cosmic fighters. All of them radiated power that made the Third Fleet look like toys. "General," his communications officer called out, "we're being scanned. I've never seen scanning beams this intense. They're reading everything. Our ship designs, our weapons, our crew biology, our database contents." Vox stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The mysterious fleet had completely surrounded the Third Fleet without anyone even noticing their approach. Weapons that registered as more powerful than anything the hegemony possessed were now pointed directly at his ships. "Admiral Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "what do you want?" The human smiled for the first time, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "What we want, General, is for you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Humanity isn't the rookie species you thought you were dealing with." A new voice joined the communication, speaking in a language that predated every known civilization. Vox's universal translator struggled with it before finally producing words that chilled him to his core. "This is Fleet Commander Zara 97 of the predecessor Archive Fleet," the voice announced. "By the authority granted in the First Compact, you are hereby ordered to withdraw from this protected system immediately." The main screen split to show a new figure alongside Admiral Chen. It appeared humanoid but was clearly artificial, its features too perfect, its eyes holding an intelligence that seemed older than stars. Behind it, the bridge of its ship was visible, and the technology was so advanced that Vox couldn't even understand what he was looking at. "The humans are under the protection of the First Council," the artificial being continued. "Any aggressive action against them will be considered an act of war against the predecessor archive." "But the predecessors disappeared 12,000 years ago," Vox protested weakly. "We withdrew," the being corrected. "We did not disappear. And we left guardians to watch over our chosen successors." Admiral Chen stepped forward again. "You see, General, humanity isn't a rookie species at all. We're the latest generation of a civilization that your Galactic Council couldn't even imagine. The predecessors didn't vanish, they evolved beyond physical existence, but they left us their knowledge, their technology, and their guardians." The tactical display updated again, showing technical readouts that made Vox's head spin. The human ships, which had looked so primitive just minutes ago, were reading as having energy outputs that rivaled his dreadnought. Their hulls weren't crude metal construction. They were metamaterial composites that could adapt to any weapon. "The crude appearance of our ships was intentional," Chen explained. We learned long ago that it's better to be underestimated. While your species spent millennia conquering primitive worlds, we spent that time growing, learning, and preparing for the day when the young races would finally venture far enough from their home systems to find us. Impossible, Vox repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. The evidence was all around him. Your Galactic Council has been operating under a fundamental misunderstanding, the predecessor Guardian continued. You believe you are the dominant civilizations in this galaxy. You believe you represent the pinnacle of evolution and technology. You are incorrect. More ships continued appearing on the sensors. Hundreds of them now, with more arriving every minute. Not just around Earth, but throughout the solar system. Ancient installations on planets and moons were coming online, their power sources awakening after millennia of dormancy. The first council established protocols 12,000 years ago, Admiral Chen explained. When a species reached a certain level of development, they would be contacted and invited to join the galactic community. But if that same species chose aggression over cooperation, if they came as conquerors rather than explorers, they would face the archive fleet. The hegemony sensors detected weapons powering up throughout the mysterious fleet. Energy readings climbed to levels that shouldn't have been possible. Each of the new ships carried enough firepower to sterilize worlds. You have a choice, General, the Guardian stated. Withdraw your fleet immediately and return to your council with a message. Tell them that the rookie species they thought they could enslave represent something far older and more dangerous than they ever imagined. Vox looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Fear was written on every expression. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful just an hour ago, was now completely outgunned and outnumbered by technology that shouldn't exist. And if we refuse? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Then the archive fleet will demonstrate why the predecessors were the dominant force in this galaxy for 1,000,000 years before your species even developed fire, Admiral Chen replied coldly. The tactical display showed targeting systems locking onto every hegemony ship simultaneously. Power readings spiked to levels that would have been impossible for any known technology. 30 seconds to comply, the Guardian announced. General Vox realized that his third fleet, which had seemed invincible just moments ago, was now completely at the mercy of forces beyond his understanding. The humans hadn't just achieved faster-than-light travel. They were the inheritors of the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. And they were no longer hiding. All ships, he commanded, his voice hollow with defeat. Prepare to withdraw. Set course for hegemony space. As the hegemony fleet began its retreat, Admiral Chen turned to Commander Torres. Signal the archive fleet. Begin Phase 2. Yes, ma'am, Torres replied. The Council worlds? Sarah nodded grimly. It's time the Galactic Council learned what happens when you threaten a predecessor protectorate. In the depths of space, ancient machines that had waited for 12 millennia began their work. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's first contact hadn't been with the primitive species the Council thought they were dealing with. It had been with the species that had created the rules of galactic civilization in the first place. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from 47 species shouted at each other in languages that their universal translators couldn't keep up with. The massive holographic display showed something impossible. The Third Fleet in full retreat from the human system, with massive unknown vessels in pursuit. Supreme Counselor Wythex slammed his tentacles against his speaking platform, the sound echoing through the chrome chamber. "Silence!" his ancient voice boomed. "General Vox, report immediately!" The display shifted to show General Vox's face, his reptilian features twisted with an expression none of them had ever seen before, absolute terror. "Supreme Counselor," he began, his voice shaking, "the humans, they're not what we thought. They're not a rookie species." "What are you talking about?" demanded Ambassador Thren, his gills fluttering rapidly. You have 50 ships against 12 primitives. 50 ships against a fleet that numbers in the thousands, Vox corrected. Ships using technology that makes our best vessels look like stone axes. Supreme Counselor, they claim to be protected by something called the Predecessor Archive. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the atmospheric recyclers seemed to quiet down. The word predecessor carried weight that transcended species and cultures across the galaxy. Impossible, whispered Zextar, his forearms trembling. The predecessors are myth. They never existed. They exist, Vox replied grimly, and according to their archive fleet, humanity isn't a primitive species. They're the predecessors' chosen successors. Counselor Krisha's crystalline form began vibrating at frequencies that produced haunting harmonic tones. You're telling us that the species we plan to enslave is connected to the most advanced civilization in galactic history? Before Vox could answer, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. The holographic display expanded to show not General Vox, but a figure that made every representative step back in shock. The being appeared humanoid but was clearly artificial, with features too perfect for any natural species. Its eyes held an intelligence that seemed to peer directly into their souls. Behind it, glimpses of technology so advanced that none of them could even comprehend its function. I am Fleet Commander Zara 97 of the Predecessor Archive, the being announced, its voice carrying harmonics that bypassed their universal translators and spoke directly to their consciousness. I address the Galactic Council on behalf of the Human Protectorate. Supreme Counselor Wethex's ancient form seemed to shrink into itself. In 3,000 years of leading the Council, he had never encountered anything like this. The Archive has been monitoring your expansion for the past millennium, Zara 97 continued. Your methods of conquering primitive species and forcing them into servitude violate the first compact established 12,000 years ago. The first compact is a legend, protested Counselor Moore, his telepathic voice filled with desperation. The first compact is the foundation of galactic civilization, the Archive commander corrected. You have been unknowingly violating its principles for centuries. This ends now. The display split to show tactical information that made the Council representatives sick with fear. Archive fleet vessels were appearing throughout the galaxy, emerging from hidden locations in dead systems and asteroid fields. Ancient installations on barren worlds were powering up after millennia of dormancy. How many ships? Whispered General Vox from his retreating fleet. The Archive maintains 12 million active vessels, Zara 97 stated matter-of-factly. An additional 40 million can be activated within a galactic standard day if needed. The number was incomprehensible. The combined fleets of all Galactic Council species totaled perhaps 200,000 ships. They were outnumbered by more than 60 to 1 by vessels using technology they couldn't even understand. What do you want? Supreme Counselor Wythex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Justice, came a new voice. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared beside the Archive commander, her human face calm but determined. For 3,000 years, your council has conquered and enslaved species across the galaxy. You've destroyed countless civilizations and reduced proud peoples to labor forces. That's how galactic civilization works, protested the Valorian delegate. The strong rule the weak. That's how your civilization works, Admiral Chen corrected. It's not how galactic civilization is supposed to work. The predecessors established the first compact to prevent exactly this kind of exploitation. Zara 97 gestured, and the holographic display changed to show historical records that predated any known civilization. The images showed the galaxy as it had been 12,000 years ago, with thousands of species living in harmony under predecessor guidance. The predecessors withdrew from physical existence to allow younger species to develop naturally, the Archive commander explained. but they left guardians to ensure that development proceeded according to the principles of the first compact: cooperation, mutual growth, and respect for all sentient life. We established trade networks, peaceful contact protocols, and protection for developing species, Admiral Chen added. What you call rookie species were supposed to be welcomed as equals, not conquered as slaves. The Verdani representative, her flower-like head drooping, asked the question they all feared. What happens to us now? That depends on your choices, Zara 97 replied. The Archive Fleet has compiled evidence of your crimes against developing species. Over 300 civilizations have been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by Council actions in the past 1,000 years alone. The tactical display updated to show Archive Fleet vessels moving to strategic positions throughout Council space. They weren't attacking, but their presence made it clear that resistance would be futile. The Human Protectorate demands the following, Admiral Chen announced, her voice carrying the authority of a civilization that had just revealed itself as the galaxy's true power. First, the immediate liberation of all enslaved species. Second, reparations for damaged worlds and destroyed civilizations. Third, the establishment of new governance structures based on the original First Compact. And if we refuse? General Vox asked, though his retreating fleet had already answered that question. Then the Archive Fleet will enforce compliance, Zara 97 stated simply. We have spent 12 millennia hoping that younger species would eventually develop wisdom to match their ambition. You have proven that hope misplaced. Supreme Counselor Wythex looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. Fear was written on every face, regardless of species. The galaxy's power structure had just collapsed in the span of a single hour. The hegemony has ruled 700 worlds for 2,000 years, he said desperately. You can't expect us to simply give up everything we've built. You've built an empire on slavery and conquest, Admiral Chen replied coldly. We can absolutely expect you to give that up. The display changed again, showing specific Council worlds. But now, Archive Fleet vessels were visible in orbit around each one. Peaceful, non-threatening, but absolutely overwhelming in their numbers and obvious technological superiority. The transition will be managed by Archive Fleet peacekeeping forces, Zara 97 announced. Enslaved populations will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can rebuild their civilizations. Council species will be assigned appropriate territories based on their original homeworlds and legitimate colonies. What about our military forces? Demanded General Vox. Your weapons are now obsolete, the Archive commander stated. Archive technology renders your military capabilities irrelevant. However, those who accept the new order will be offered opportunities to serve as peacekeepers and exploration forces under Archive guidance. Counselor Krishaw's crystalline form chimed with desperate harmonics. This is the end of everything we've known. It's the end of an age of exploitation, Admiral Chen corrected. It's the beginning of what the galaxy was always supposed to become. The holographic display shifted to show a vision of the future. Worlds where different species worked together as equals, where technology was shared freely, where the principles of cooperation replaced the law of conquest. The choice is simple, Zara 97 continued. Accept the new order and work toward building a truly civilized galaxy, or face the consequences of continued resistance. On the tactical display, more Archive Fleet vessels continued appearing. Not just hundreds or thousands now, but tens of thousands. Ancient shipyards and hidden systems were coming online, producing vessels at a rate that defied comprehension. Supreme Counselor Wythex realized that this wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration of surrender terms from the galaxy's true rulers to a group of upstart species who had overplayed their hand. We need time to discuss this, he said weakly. You have 6 galactic standard hours, Admiral Chen replied, After that, Archive fleet enforcement begins whether you agree or not." The communication ended, leaving the Galactic Council chamber in stunned silence. Around them, holographic displays showed the reality of their situation. Archive fleet vessels were everywhere, their own fleets were helplessly outgunned, and the species they had thought were primitive had just revealed themselves as the inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced civilization. "What have we done?" whispered Ambassador Thran. "We tried to enslave the descendants of gods," replied General Vox from his flagship, watching Archive fleet vessels escort his retreating fleet with casual ease. "And now we're going to pay for every crime we've committed in the last 3,000 years." In the depths of space around Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as human vessels worked alongside their Archive fleet guardians. The ships that had appeared so primitive to General Vox were now revealing their true capabilities, their adaptive hulls reconfiguring into forms that matched the elegant technology of their ancient protectors. "Orders from Earth Command, Admiral," reported Commander Torres. "We're to begin Phase 3. Sarah nodded. Phase 3 was the integration protocol, the process by which humanity would take its rightful place as the galaxy's guiding species, not as conquerors like the Council races, but as the teachers and protectors the predecessors had always intended them to become. "Signal the Archive fleet," she commanded. "Begin the liberation operations. It's time to free every enslaved species in the galaxy." As Archive fleet vessels throughout the galaxy began their work, the age of the Galactic Council's dominance came to an end. In its place, something new was beginning, a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, on mutual growth instead of exploitation. The rookie species had just taught the galaxy's self-proclaimed masters that sometimes the newest players in the game are actually the ones who wrote the rules in the first place, and humanity was just getting started.